Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this Digital Analytics Program learning series on Visualizing Analytics Data Part 2. My name is Tim Loudon, and I'm the Program Manager for the Digital Analytics Program.
And my name is Freddie Blicker. I'm an analyst on the Digital Analytics Program.
So we appreciate you joining us today. We've got this interesting between two ferns kind of setup. Unfortunately, no plants, but we hope that we can give you a lot of good information. So let's get right into the slides. And before I actually get started, I do want to mention, as always, that you can ask questions via the chat box. And as Freddie is talking a little bit in his part of the presentation, I'll be taking a look at the questions that you put in and try to answer them for you, or we can address them to the entire crowd if we feel it's pertinent. And additionally, this will be recorded and available immediately after the webinar on our YouTube DigitalGov channel in the Analytics playlist. On top of that, we'll be following up after the webinar where all attendees will receive an email with all of the slides, as well as a satisfaction survey, which we really hope you'll fill out because it does help us make sure that we are creating content that's worthwhile for you. So with that, let's talk about what we're doing today. So firstly, this is part 2 of the series where we kind of show you different ways that you can create charts and visualizations based on the DAP Google Analytics data. If you haven't watched part 1, you can find it on our channel. And when you receive the slides, I've got a link right to it here. And you can see Freddie did a great job showing folks how you can take data and export it to either Google Sheets or Excel, and then create charts based on that. But today, we're actually going to show you how to use one of the tools that is designed specifically to go straight to visualization without having to actually get the interim step of exporting into a spreadsheet. And there's no export actually needed with the tool that we'll show you today. So what we're going to cover is basically, firstly, what to think about before you're going to create a dashboard, because you don't want to create a dashboard with a bunch of information that isn't valuable. We'll show you a little bit about how to link the data source, the Google Analytics data source in this case, or potentially other data sources as well in the tool. And then we'll pass it over to Freddie, who's going to show you actually how to create and style visuals that he did before to create a pretty awesome report. And I think he's going to show you how to be able to put a lot of things together in a short period of time. And then we'll talk a little bit about how you can share and export those types of reports or embed them into a website. So before we begin, what are the things we need to think about before we're making a visualization or dashboard type report? Firstly, what are our goals and KPIs? If you've taken our trainings before, you've probably heard us harp on this. We aren't really big proponents of just trying to put time and effort into things that aren't helping measure the success of your site. So prior to doing all this, hopefully you understand what the goals of your site are, what your key performance indicators are, and you've been able to communicate that to your management so that folks know how you're measuring if you're achieving the things that you'd like your visitors to achieve on your site. So how will this dashboard provide value? You know, and kind of, I guess, connected to that, the final bullet, who my audience is. So you want to make sure that you're understanding, is this something that we want to show to the public? Is it for a conference? Is it for a small meeting with supervisors? And how can we show that this is a valuable use of time to create a dashboard? How is this going to help us improve as we try to make user experience better on our site, or try to get through a redesign, various different things. And along with who is my audience, you also want to think about what is the analytics competency of that audience. So you don't want to create visualizations that are very, very difficult to understand if the audience is not you know, very knowledgeable in analytics stuff. So if it's for the public, for example, you probably want to try to keep it pretty simple, have some big numbers, have some things that are achieving your goals. But that's all stuff that you would do before you get into the tool itself. So, oh, I have nice visuals there. So now we're going to actually show you the tool that we're going to use today. It's Google Data Studio. And I want to stress that we don't recommend any particular tool. This one happens to be one that we can use here at GSA. It's a free tool that connects very easily with Google Analytics. I know that elsewhere at GSA, folks are using Tableau. I think that many other agencies use Tableau as well. And there are also some business, some like BI dashboard and BI intelligence tools like Sisense and things like that that other folks use. But for our purposes today, we're just going to show you Data Studio. So if we go to datastudio.google.com, this is what you land on. And this is a relatively new tool that's being offered by Google. It's been out maybe 6 months or so. It's still in beta. It's a free tool. So that's a benefit for folks that are budget constrained. But you can see where we land here. We start out at this area, and it has some sort of template reports that you can click on that gives you an example of what it can do. And it also has this section, Welcome to Data Studio, start here. And I definitely recommend that folks take the time, as well as after watching this webinar, to go through and actually read some of the information that they give you to start out. It is really informative. And then, obviously, you can also take a look at what it can do by clicking on some of those examples that they give you. So here's an example. We'll just click on one. This one was built specifically to measure AdWords. And you can see it's pretty complex. It's got a lot of different things going on. But it gives good examples of how you can stylize, with the dark background. You can choose color schemes, things like that. And then if you'd like, you can say, use this template, and then you can edit it. We're going to build something today from scratch because Freddie's awesome. But you can also use any of the templates if you'd like. So let me just make sure I covered what I wanted to there. I talked about that. OK, so now we want to show you how to add data sources so that you can actually start making the visualizations with this particular tool. You can see in the left-hand side here, we've got reports, and then we've got a section for data sources. So you can add data sources after you create a report, but you can also just add them right here in the sort of home page area of Data Studio. So if we click on data sources, we can see that, let's see here. This is what I've already linked to this particular account. But down in the bottom right-hand side here, there's the plus sign. And that's how we add a new data source. So if I click that, you can see all these different things that we can then add. So in this case, we're going to add Google Analytics. But take a look at what this particular tool allows you to draw from. If you use AdWords or Google Sheets, SQL, YouTube Analytics, that's a really interesting one. Search Console data, for those of you that also are using maybe an independent account on top of the DAP account, and you have Search Console data, you can also bring that data in to make visualizations. And one thing that's good to note about this is that you're not limited to one data source when you're creating a dashboard. So you can link many different data sources and then be able to use them all in one single dashboard. So I'm going to name this one GSA DAP data. And then we can click here for Google Analytics. And there's the account that we all use for DAP. The GSA profile happens to be in property 1. And we can find it here and connect. So when I hit this, you're going to see that it's going to bring me to a page that will talk about all the different dimensions and metrics that are going to be pulled in for use for our visualizations. So we can say connect. And you can see here, here's a bunch of the information. So these are all the various different metrics and dimensions that you can then access by connecting this Google Analytics account. I do not recommend adjusting any of this. This is pretty much everything that you need, and I wouldn't bother removing anything at this point. We can just go ahead and say, OK, let's create a report. And then it brings us here. So we can say, add this data to the report. And then from there, we are at the point where we can create a dashboard. You'll hear us probably toggle back and forth between calling it a dashboard or a report. Data Studio calls them reports. I view them more as kind of a dashboard. But now we can actually start making the things. So before we get into that, I just wanted to mention that just like with Google Analytics dashboards in the GA interface, for those of you who have made dashboards in Google Analytics, you've probably heard me talk about the fact that one of the biggest downsides of creating dashboards in Google Analytics is that it doesn't tell you when the data is being sampled. And Freddie and I did some research because we wanted to make sure we could give you good information about this regarding Data Studio. And it turns out that it's the same thing. So creating visualizations in Data Studio is just like creating widgets in a dashboard within the Google Analytics interface, in the sense that the data might be sampled and you don't necessarily know it. So there are obviously a couple things you can do here to try to prevent that from happening. Number one is try not to make date ranges longer than 30 days. And number two is, in this case, it might be good if you have an independent account. You can actually also just link multiple data sources, and your independent account, maybe because it'll only be on your website, might have lesser sampling rate. Oh, I see my YouTube video still playing there. So I just wanted to make everyone aware of that. You may want to play around with the different accounts that you're connecting to make a visualization or a dashboard. But just be cognizant that if you stretch out the date ranges, and Freddie's going to show you actually how you can change the date ranges, but if you stretch them out beyond 30 days, you may be subject to sampling and you won't know that. OK, now, before I pass it over to Freddie to show you some of the really cool things that you can do, I just want to let you know that I put a couple slides in here to help so that when folks get the slides, they see where the different aspects are. So creating visuals, filters and segments, as well as styling. But Freddie's actually going to just show you all that in the demo itself. So if you need to refer back to the slides, feel free. And a reminder that this will be recorded if you feel like you want to get a little bit of a slower run through. But at this point, we'll pass it over to Freddie, who can show you how to make your own dashboards with this tool.
OK, great. All right, so I'm really excited about doing a little presentation and doing a live demo for you on Google Data Studio today. Google Data Studio is a really powerful drag and drop tool that really empowers you to kind of harness all of the data that you have in a quick and effective way. What you see on the screen right now is a dashboard that I put together in Google Data Studio. This is a GSA agency-specific mobile dashboard. So I'm going to go through over the next 30 minutes and walk you through literally how you can create this in hopefully 30 minutes. So we're going to see how far along I can get with that. But what's really cool about this is it hooks right into Google Analytics. You don't have to go into any type of custom report. You don't have to do anything within the Google Analytics interface. You just basically need to know how to, number one, use Google Analytics, filters, segments, etc., and then how to actually just literally drag and drop. So let's jump into recreating this dashboard today. So I'm going to go over into Google Data Studio. I'm going to click on New Report. Just going to name this GSA Live Demo. Then I'm going to choose, I've already added the GSA agency profile to my data sources here. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to add this to my report. So now we're already hooked into the GSA data. So this is already really quick and really fast. So really quickly, I'm just going to kind of go through the ribbon here just to kind of give you an idea of what is possible. So this little ribbon here gives you a lot of different charts, gives you kind of geographic maps, scorecards, scatter charts, etc. It also lets you format everything as well. And it also gives you date filters and then dimension filters. So it's really powerful. So let's just do a really quick example just to show you what we're talking about here. I'm just going to do a really quick trend chart. And as you see here, Google Data Studio knows what type of data is important for you to look at. So they're automatically picking out sessions. So you can automatically look at sessions here. So already you have a lot of really powerful tools at your fingertips. So now you could even, let's add another metric here just as an example. Let's do page views. So I'm going to apply that. And there we have our trended sessions and our trended page views. And it's almost immediate, it's dynamic, and it's really cool. So let me delete that. Now, let me jump into recreating this dashboard here that we were originally talking about. Now, let's go over this just really quickly. So my thought process around this was, let's say your agency head or your product manager at your agency came to you and said, you know, we need to have a mobile first mindset with our website. So we really need to focus on how do we better use Google Analytics data to figure out what mobile devices are accessing our website and what OSs are accessing our website, and how do we better design or enhance our website for those devices and OSs. So that was kind of the thought process with putting this dashboard together. So up here, you'll see I have broken out iOS, Android, and then other. I have a chart here looking at trended sessions from different device types. And then I have a chart here with operating systems for smartphones specifically. And then I have another chart here with how people are getting to the GSA site on smartphone devices. I also have demographics data. So I have these age bands here, and I have gender broken out as well as geography. So as you can see here, all of this is dynamic. You just hover, and it gives you all of the data. So really powerful stuff. Additionally, you can also show you how to do this. You can actually look at percentage increase or decrease in whatever metric you want to look at. So this is looking at the last 7 days, and this is also comparing the same 7 days 1 year ago. So what this means here is we've got 393.8 thousand sessions on iOS, so on Apple devices, smartphones. So that's a 4.4% increase year over year during the same time period. So the beauty of this type of dashboard is you have instant, usable, useful information at your fingertips. You don't have to go necessarily into Google Analytics to pull it out manually each time. You can just kind of set this, forget it, and then toggle by date. And it's really simple and really powerful. So let me jump in here and start recreating this. So we've already connected our data source here. So it's the GSA profile. First thing you need to do is let's do really quickly a bar chart here. And I want to show you this in action. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter for mobile device specific traffic. So let me pull up here and show you how to do that. So I'm going to change the dimension here to device type. So device category. So here we have desktop, mobile, and tablet. Now what I want to do is I only want to see that mobile piece of this, right? So how you do this is you need to go to Page in the dialog menu, click on Current Page Settings, and then you're going to select your data source again. So I'm going to choose GSA. And then I'm going to be applying what is called a global filter here for mobile specifically. Now the beauty of this is anything that you create from here on out is going to be mobile specific. So you don't need to worry about it from here on out. So really powerful stuff. So let me just do this in live time with you right now. So I'm going to do mobile only traffic. That's the name of the filter. I'm going to say include, then I'm going to choose device. Category equals mobile. Now, if I've done this correctly, it automatically updates this bar chart to only show mobile. So that is how you confirm and that you know that you're only looking at mobile data from here on out. So important to do that first off. always go to the current page settings. That's where you set the global filter. We'll be doing more filters as we go on. All right, so let's jump into this. So first I want to recreate this dashboard by pulling in some scorecards. That's what these are, these session counts here. So I'm going to create a scorecard and just walk you through that. So I'm going to click on scorecard, just literally drag it, and I've got sessions now. Now over here, there's a lot of cool little interface options. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to literally go through this and show you how an analyst thinks about this stuff and how we would put together one of these for you if you contacted us at DAP. So I'm going to do a previous year. So that's going to be the comparison. So you see that it shows you this percentage decrease. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here is style it just really quickly. I'm going to compact the numbers. And there is a scorecard. Now what I can do here as well is I can just literally copy and paste the same scorecard and then just move it over with my arrow keys on my keyboard. Just like that. Okay, so going back to this, we're looking at iOS, Android, and other operating systems. So I'm going to change the data source here, or I'm going to change the dimension rather, to show only iOS. So how do we do that? So I'm going to show you how to do that real quick by adding a filter. So this is another filter that we're going to create. I'm going to call this iOS only traffic. I'm going to do include. I'm going to select operating system. Let's try equals and then iOS. Now be careful here because you need to have the correct case with whatever value you're putting in here. Otherwise it won't work. So let's see if I did that correctly. I'm going to go add an image here real quick. So let me go over here. You just hover over this image. You just basically draw a little square. Then you can select a file. And then you could download just a picture from Google, upload it, and there you go. So that is how quick and easy it is. You just literally drag and drop, move around different tiles of data. So let me continue on here. And then I'm going to come back and worry about styling later on. So let's talk about tables here. So we've got an operating system table that you can set up. Now you'll see here operating system, it's broken down by iOS, Android, Windows, etc. We're looking at sessions, average time on page, bounce rate, and additionally we have heat maps here as well. So this will give you kind of an interesting view of what all this data is and what it means and what the engagement looks like. So let's do this. All right, so I'm going to click on the table icon up here. I'm going to draw this. And I am going to select operating system. Okay, now look at that. That immediately toggled out the other data, and now it puts in operating system. And this is already filtered by smartphone. And as you can see here, it's only showing smartphone OSs. Okay, so it automatically pulls in sessions. So we've got that session count there. Now we want to look at average time on page and bounce rate. So it's as simple as going in here and clicking on add a metric. So we're going to do AVG. Okay, and then we're also going to do bounce rate. Okay, and there we go. Now you can just kind of move these column rows over. They're a little finicky, but you just have to drag them. Okay, so there we go. All right, now next thing. I'm just going to go through here again, just looking at what type of data we're pulling in. I'm not going to compare this data. We're just going to keep it. We're going to keep it at the last 28 days. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to style this data. So let me go over to style. Okay, now we're going to look at column 1, which is already a number, so that's this column right here. So we're going to look at column 2, and I'm going to make this a bar. Oops. Wait, let me go back to column 1. Okay, there we go. So column 1 is sessions. Okay, so you can see the numbers are now represented by bar charts. And what we're going to do now is we're going to show the number. So see, it's very dynamic, so it's super powerful. Now, next thing I want to do is I want to look at average time on page. So I'm going to go to column 2, leave that as a bar, and I'm going to make this green. I'm going to show the number as well. And now you have, actually I'm going to make this into a heat map. Okay, so the longer your users stay on a specific page, the better. So I'm using green here for that. You can use any color scheme you want. This is just kind of something we're doing on the fly here. And for bounce rate, I'm going to do another heat map, and I'm going to do red.
And then it just automatically creates a gradient based on the one color you set, rather than having to set sort of a minimum and a maximum.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Super easy heat mapping.
Yeah. So the beauty of this is that you can immediately see, rather than just staring at numbers, you can immediately see, okay, iOS and Android are the most two important OSs for all of our smartphone devices going to the GSA. You can look at the gradient within the average time on page. You can see, overall around a minute, these different OSs are spending. Notably, there's some darker ones. Looks like Nokia OS spends 2 minutes and 4 seconds, but they have considerably less traffic. So it's not really, there's really no point in looking at this for optimizing your site. You really want to focus on the kind of two main groups up here, iOS and Android. So you can start to play with this type of data, this type of chart, to find insights really quickly and really easily. So let's say you want to look at your default channel grouping, so how people are getting to your site. So let's do another chart here. So I'm going to add a different dimension here. I'm going to do marketing channel. So I'm going to do default channel grouping, just as an example. Okay, and as you can see here, we've got, let me take out the source. Okay, so you see we have the default channel grouping here. It says referral, organic search, direct social. These are all the different channels through which people are reaching GSA along with the session count. So I'm going to do the same thing by adding in average time on page and bounce rate.
We're being serenaded by the sounds of DC right now.
Yes. Okay, and I'm going to add in bounce rate. And then I'm going to do the same type of formatting as I did before with operating system. Now, one thing to note, default channel group, this is automatically toggled to your smartphone data using that global filter that I set up in the beginning. That's the beauty of Google Data Studio. Actually, average time on page somehow disappeared. Let me go back to that. And depending on what date range you choose, it'll take either longer or faster to load. So typically you want to try to limit the amount of data that you're pulling. I'll show you how to do that in just a bit. Now you'll see here, I want it to actually line up with how I've done it in this chart here. So I want to have average time on page, but I've got in the last column here. All you do is you literally just drag it up and drop it down, and then it automatically updates. But sessions needs to go up here. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go through this without really explaining it. Just going to style it real quick.
In the same way that's just out of the last heat map, right?
Yep. So I'm going to do the bar chart. I want to show the numbers. You can also compact the numbers as well. If you, instead of saying 1,100,000, you could just say 1.1 million. So that's also something you could do. Let's see here, column 2, I want to have, or column 3 rather, I want to have another heat map. Okay, average time, don't want it to be red. Okay, and I want it to be red for bounce rate. All right, cool. So there we go. So these are all set up. We now have the heat maps with the gradients. Let's jump into date ranges real quick. So you're all probably wondering, how do I set up something? How do I pull different dates? So here's the really cool thing with Google Data Studio. You just click on this little date range icon here, drag this, and this creates this little toggle here. So it's basically a filter. So you can preset date ranges. You can do, let's do the last 7 days. So this is now updating. Okay. Now you see everything here changed. Our scorecard changed. So this week versus last year during the same week, traffic is actually up 4.4%. And then both of these tables have changed as well. Okay, let's jump into one other quick thing. I do want to point out this. Here's a really cool thing that you can do. You can also filter by dimensions. So let's do that right now. So let's look at what this looks like. So any dimension, you can actually set up a similar type of toggle like I did with date range. And you can choose, let's say you didn't want to use this table that we set up with marketing channel, but you could choose if you wanted to just see Google traffic. And you could update your data that way. So super powerful in how the different functionalities within this work. And you can see here, source Google, it only shows organic search and paid search, which is what you would expect. So it's a really cool way of being able to manipulate your data without having to go in and create tons of custom reports. So I'm going to delete that.
One thing to note just as you're getting here, because as I was getting familiar with Data Studio, one thing that I noticed was that when I, for example, put the date picker widget in the dashboard, I kept trying to set the date by clicking in it right after I created it. And one thing that you just did that's important for the folks listening to know is that you can see in the top right, Freddie's currently right now in the edit view, and then you can go to the view without trying to be redundant. But that's where, when you put that in, you can then choose your new dates right in the widget. And the same thing with the dimension picker, because I kept clicking in there and it wouldn't let me do it there.
Exactly. Yep. I had the same challenge. But if you look here, you're now in the view. view, and if you want to edit it, you go back in the edit view, and you'll see this kind of graph paper background. Okay, so let me do one more example from this and just kind of show you how quickly you can kind of style this stuff. Let's just do a quick pie chart on gender. So let's look at some demographic data. It's going to pull that. And for some reason, it shows country code. We don't want that. Let me go to gender. Actually, maybe I clicked on the country code. Yeah. Here we go. Okay, age. So there's a whole lot of different things that you could do here with charts on the fly. So super powerful stuff. If you wanted to style it, you could just go up here. You could add text boxes to this. So it's pretty powerful. So we didn't create the exact whole dashboard, but we got good chunks of it. So this is the kind of the beauty and the power of Google Data Studio. What's really cool about this is that you can, in edit mode, reproduce this pretty quickly, but just by copying it. So I'm just doing Command-C on my Mac, and then Command-V, and then immediately I have another box that I can set up. You just click on it, and you can change it. So I could go in here and add an Android filter instead of iOS. So I could remove that and add an Android filter. And that would only show Android sessions, and then you could add the Android image as well. So
I think what's really, what I found in my not too much experience working with this tool so far is that right-hand bar when you're in the edit mode and you look at the data versus the styling tab, it starts out looking really daunting because it's something it's something we haven't seen before.
Yep.
But I think what you said is definitely pertinent in the sense that if you understand how Google Analytics works well, like if you folks on the line have gotten pretty good at creating custom reports and segments and making filters, as you just kind of walk through each little part, it starts to make a lot more sense. And it's actually, it's relatively simple to do things like the heat mapping, which if you try to do that in a spreadsheet, it's a little more difficult.
Correct. Yep.
So.
Yep. No, there's definitely a lot of different pros and cons of every tool within Google Data Studio. It definitely makes it more flexible for you so that you don't have to necessarily figure out what's going on inside Google Analytics interface. You can just kind of drag and drop and filter all the same concepts. So really powerful.
Awesome. If we could jump back over to the slides, we can talk about the last few interesting things that you can do once you create the dashboard. And so once you've become a pro like Freddie, and that was less than 30 minutes. So I think if you gave him 45, he could recreate that whole thing. So when you're creating your awesome dashboards at lightning speed, you might want to either export them so you can have them in a PDF format so that you can put them. Maybe you want to print them on a big board or something for a conference. I don't know. But you also might want to share with your colleagues. So I just wanted to show how you can get a PDF of the dashboard as well as how you can share it. So firstly, I'll show you sharing, and that's really easy. And you'll see we're back to my lowly blank report, not Freddie's cool one. But just like you would share, if any of you are familiar with sort of Google Sheets or Google Docs, you would share it just in the same way. You've got this little plus sign here. And you can actually just put in, if I wanted to share it with Freddie, I could say, okay, I want to share this with Freddie Blicker at this particular thing. And then it would send him an email where he could click and then open up this exact report. Now, one thing to note and how this will be different is that I believe this works the same way that Google Docs would work, in the sense that once I share it, if Freddie makes changes, he's going to change what I have done. So unlike the way say, a Google Analytics custom report works when you share a template. If I share my Google Analytics custom report template with Freddie and he changes it, it doesn't affect mine at all. They're two separate reports. It's just a template. Conversely, just like if you've used Google Docs here, if Freddie and I are both working in this dashboard at the same time, we can both be editing things real time. So if you want to send a report to someone so that they can make changes to it but not change yours, you need to remind them to create a copy. Or maybe to be safe, you even create a copy yourself and share your copy rather than your original.
That's a really good point. And just one thing to add to that, like most Google apps, so Google Docs, Google Sheets, et cetera, you have the option of looking at your revision history. You don't have that option with Google Data Studio. So if you make a change, it's going to make the change. You can't revert back.
Aha. Oh, good catch there. OK, so that's how you can go about doing the sharing. And the other thing that I wanted to show you was how we can, and I'm going to just go back so I can find one of the more pretty reports here. Oh, they went away on me. Dun, dun, dun. OK. Well, just go back to normal Data Studio. There we go. So when you first sign in, it gives you these templates. So I'm just going to start out here to show you how I would go about making this a PDF file. So unlike many of the other tools that we've seen, there's no direct option, as far as I've found, to be able to create a file, like export as a PDF, what you've already done. So instead, what I would do is click Print. And you can see here that this gives me the screen. And when it's your own report, it doesn't have this sample overview report here. It's just what you have in your visualization in your dashboard. And if you wanted to take a static copy of this, you could save it as a PDF and then save it on your desktop or something. And then you'd have it as a file that you could send in an email or send to a printer or whatever you'd like to do. But that's the best way that I can find currently to be able to export into a PDF format. So we'll go ahead and just get rid of this, and then we'll go back. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is one of the really cool features of this particular tool is that you can actually create a dashboard and then embed it into HTML. So you can actually, rather than have to create a visualization that's separate from what you've done in the Data Studio, you can actually just create dashboards that stay dynamic and embed them in an iframe. So if we go back to here, we've got the untitled report. If you go under File and Embed Report, it's going to bring this little screen up where you can enable embedding, and then it gives you an embed code to be able to put in your iframe, and you can set the width and height. So this is pretty awesome because it allows you to create something relatively easy here and then make it public very simply with an iframe in a web page. And I wanted to show you an example of that. So there are some more detailed instructions that I've linked to about how to embed reports. And then just as an example, I also wanted to show you this blog that Google came out with about being able to embed, where they've actually done it. And it's a good example for us to show you how this works. So you can see it loads in the page right here. And in this particular case, because they knew that they just wanted it to be one big chart, they set the iframe to be relatively small. And they just, instead of making like a dashboard like Freddie had with a bunch of different things on it, they just basically did 2 scorecards and 1 really large line graph. But what's cool about it is you can see in the iframe here that it's dynamic. So I can just hover over any portion, and even though this is a public web page, I can view the data that's being created by the Data Studio visualization. So that's a really interesting feature that I think we're going to see used a lot. Those of you that are really familiar with the digital analytics program, you know we also maintain analytics.usa.gov. And I can tell you that to make that dashboard, we had to do a whole lot more work than what Freddie just did and then take an iframe embed. So I think that for those of you at agencies who might have interest in being able to display data, even if it's not Google Analytics data, this provides a pretty easy option for you to be able to import, or I'm sorry, link data into Google Data Studio, even if from a flat file, and then you can manipulate it and have it present in a web page dynamically. So pretty neat stuff there. OK, with that, we went about 50 minutes. At this point, we can ask if there are any questions. And I'm going to have to look at the actual questions here. So, all right, you can see us again, I hear. I was typing in the chat box a little earlier. I hope everyone can see the chat box. Before we sign off, can someone just try to type something in there? Because I'm not seeing any chats. Let me ask the DGU team. Do you folks see any chats coming through? OK, maybe we'll have to check on that. Well, in that case, thanks as always for joining us. Freddie, thanks for the demonstration of the visualizations. We'll be following up soon with the slides. And if you have questions that for some reason we couldn't see here, please feel free to email us. Oh, someone just wrote in. I see them. Thank you, NASA.gov video. We appreciate that there are folks who are there. So thank you all for attending. And please feel free to email us questions at dap@support.digitalgov.gov. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you soon for another training. Have a great week.